Hello everybody, Ken McAuliffe here, making a little how-to 10 best tips to get your hi-fi sounding great. It won't cost you much money, if any money, from me, Ken McAuliffe. You may know me as Ken McAuliffe, the Jazz Vinyl Audiophile from my Facebook group. No, the Jazz Vinyl Lover, or my YouTube channel, Ken McAuliffe Jazz Vinyl Audiophile. I get confused. Or you may know me from my writing at Stereophile, Downbeat, Jazz Times, or Modern Drummer magazines. But Dan wanted me to talk about hi-fi a little bit and the importance of hi-fi. I recently gave Dan a record cleaning machine, which I know he has gotten a lot of use of, and I think he was a little skeptical about it at first, but now I know he's really enjoying it. I bought a new cleaning machine. I have two cleaning machines, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to talk now about 10 tips to get the most out of your hi-fi. It's really just basic setup concerns. Number one being clean vinyl. If your records aren't clean, if they're full of oil and smudges and cigarette stains, that's what you're hearing. You're not hearing the music. Your stylus is being forced to go through a bunch of dirt to correctly ride the groove walls. And you know, vinyl and the playback system when it comes to turntables is sort of an ancient electromechanical acoustic process. There's a lot of room for error. And that's why I think perhaps back in the day people were so excited about CDs. Oh wow, no pops, no ticks. And for me, no music. This is another discussion, but CD, even at its most wonderful, because I have a pretty expensive rig, to me sounds flat. The sound stage it presents is flat, as where with vinyl, the sound stage is more physical, it's more human, which makes sense because digital is just a sample of the original analog waveform, which is what we hear on great vinyl as analog. So you want to be able to get your stylus to ride, the stylus in the cartridge on the tone arm, to ride through that groove wall of the record as easily and perfectly as possible. So the first thing you have to do is have a clean record. You can get a spin clean, which I think those are actually a kind of waste of money. If you can only spend 50 bucks on a cleaning machine, you should just get some microfiber cloths, which are abundant these days. Lay down the microfiber cloth, put your record on it. You know, I use a solution in my cleaning machine of 95% distilled water, 2.5% photo flow as a surfactant, 2.5% alcohol. And I get something like a VPI record cleaning brush or even an old dishwasher brush to apply, and I apply the fluid on the record and clean the record. And if you have to, you can just dry the record, letting it stand there in like a dishwashing rack. Better than that is to spend, you know, for 500 bucks, you can get a brand new Project VSC cleaning machine, vacuum cleaning machine that will clean and dry your records. It is a fantastic bargain, cheaper than the VPI machine, which is around $675, but you must have clean records or you're just playing dirt. And then also it's good to have your record in a nice, even if you're gonna put it in a paper sleeve, try to get a better paper sleeve. Rice sleeves or dishwasher sleeves from places like Sleeve City are the best way to go. So number one, clean vinyl. Number two, clean stylus, the little needle that rides the grooves. Now there are some very expensive gels you can buy, little square gels, to very gently drop or bounce or place. People get upset if you say you're bouncing the stylus off these gel products, but you very gently put them on and off and it will extract all of the goo from the stylus, so you can correctly ride the groove walls. The cheapest way to do that is the stuff the drummers use called Moon Gel. It's about 10 bucks online from Artist Share, somewhere like Sam Ash. It's a little gel pad the drummers put on their drum heads to take out the ring. And those things work perfectly to just take the tone arm, drop the needle. You don't drop it, you kind of place it gently. You have to treat it like it's a baby's bottom, I guess. On, off a couple times, and it'll take all the dirt off your stylus, and you can hear it automatically. When it comes to having a cartridge and a stylus, if you're playing records every day, like 6 days a week, a couple hours a day, you need to be changing that cartridge at least every 6 months. You can buy a stylus timer. I bought one, they're about 50 bucks. You push it every time you play a record. I always forget to push it, or I forget to turn it off. But every 6 months is a good time to change your stylus. Otherwise, your records, if you have a properly aligned tone arm and a balanced turntable, which I was also going to talk about, records do not wear out. This is a myth. This is a lie. Records wear out if the table is not flush, not balanced, if the arm is set up incorrectly, which causes groove wear. As I said, it's a very delicate device, electroacoustic mechanical device, the turntable. So it's got to be set up correctly. Another reason people like CD players, I can just throw it in there, but CDs can get scratched as well. But point being, and this is jumping ahead to point 3 and point 4, you want to have a correctly aligned arm. Project makes another wonderful device called an Align It, based on the Fikert protractor, which is one of the best ways to set up your tone arm. There are different ways to set up your tone arm, different measurement guides that have been set up. I won't get into all that. But you choose one of these settings. Bare wall is one of the most common. So essentially, the tone arm is tracking the cartridge at the correct spot at the beginning of the grooves and at the end of the side, going through it, because there's a lot of tension, G-force happening. So you want to have a properly set up tone arm. You want to make sure, get a little builder's level, that your turntable is totally level, which can be a little hard to do sometimes. Some turntables have self-adjusting feet. You can put little blocks under your turntable. We're jumping ahead to tip number 4. But the turntable has to be balanced so the tone arm is balanced correctly, so the cartridge is riding perfectly level, so you don't get groove wear, and your records will stay good forever. As long as that you have your tone arm and your cartridge set at the correct tracking force, and the tone arm is set up correctly as far as the weighting is concerned for that cartridge, your records will never wear out. You can hand them to your children, they'll be heirlooms. This is why records can go for thousands of dollars from people who have taken care of their records, because they don't wear out. Styluses wear out, turntables wear out, but records do not wear out if you properly care for the devices playing them. Roy Gandy, the founder and owner of Rega turntables, perhaps the most abundant turntable supplier in the world, wrote a great book called A Vibration Measuring Machine. I believe that's it, which is what essentially a turntable is. It is measuring the vibrations of the world, your house, the rack you have the turntable setting on, and the cartridge. That's why it's got to be perfectly set up. It's funny because back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, anybody could set up a turntable. You didn't really think about it. They were easy to do. You were given easy protractors. It wasn't a big deal, but now people are like, oh my God, how do I set up my turntable? But it's really an easy thing if you can just follow instructions. So we jump ahead beyond the world of turntables. We have clean vinyl, clean stylus, correctly aligned tone arm. Our table is balanced, into speaker setup. You want to make sure that the negative and positive, the red and black from the amplifier, are the same red and black on the back of your speaker binding post. And you really have to move the speakers around a lot to get the best sound. In simplistic terms, closer to the wall, you're going to get more bass. Farther out from the wall, you get more present. Things will sound more alive. You want to make sure the speakers are equidistant from your listening device. You want to also make sure that the speaker cables from the amplifier to the speakers are the same distance. Everything has to be balanced. But you can toe in your speakers. You can fire them straight ahead. You can toe them in so the sweet spot, the focus point, lands right in front of you, or it lands at your sweet spot where you're sitting, as they call it. But it's very important to play with your speaker setup. It's also important to have your speakers, if they're bookshelf speakers, on a pair of good stands. You can get a pair of Target stands, wooden stands, off of eBay for around, Amazon for around $80, I think. They'll last you forever. They have spikes. You get a blue tack or little rubber nubs to put on top of the speaker stand bases, or those little rubber nubs on the bottom of your speakers, because where the speaker touches the platform, the top plate of the speaker stand, you want a little bit of connection. And blue tack or little rubber feet are a good way to not only solidify the speaker on the speaker stand, but it kind of creates a system. It kind of creates a touch point, contact. You also getting to, well, that's another thing, we'll talk about that, the whole thing of lot of people like to use pods or gel things or yada 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 under their gear. Something decouple, something's couple. But basic speaker setup, moving them back and forth, not just settling for the first place they go or the easiest place they go. Like I have a friend, he has a baby, his wife runs this house. His system, he has a very nice system, is in his living room, but basically he's sitting here and they have a big open doorway here in front of him, and the system just sort of shoved off to that side. And one speaker is like 5 feet from him, the other speaker is like 10 feet from him. Well, he's never going to get a good sound that way. If you want to get the most out of your sound, you're really, not only you're playing your speakers, your system, you're also playing the room, because speaker placement at specific points in the room, and there are room nodes. Some people set speakers up, if you divide it into thirds, on the first third or the second third, that's one way to get speaker placement, but you are really hearing the room. Do you have a concrete floor? Do you have a wooden floor, a suspended wooden floor? Do you have 8-foot ceilings, 10-foot ceilings? Are you setting up your system on the long wall if you have a long room, or on the short wall if you in your room? All these things will make a distance in the sound, and it sounds overwhelming, but these are all things you can do over time. But think about this, your speaker position to get the best sound out of them. That's why some guys want to have a dedicated room where they can really get to town and not have to deal so much with their family and the TV. The music becomes the focus, not the entertainment room. As I said, you play the room. These are all just things to think about. Some people with tin ceilings. I have a tin ceiling in my apartment. I have 10-foot ceilings. I've tried to treat those ceilings. I've done so many things. But I have found that where I place the speakers in relation to my listening position is more important than the height of the ceilings. Another really important thing that I've only really discovered recently is not only do you want to move your speakers back and forth, you want to move your listening position closer to the speakers or closer to the wall. Because the closer your speaker is, rather your seat position is to the back wall, the more bass you're going to hear. You become part of the wall. You become part of the system of the room, which is getting played as well. Don't get played by your stereo, man. You know what I'm saying? So now we're up to point number 8. A quick overview. Tip number 1, clean your vinyl. 2, clean your stylus. 3, a correctly aligned tone arm. 4, a correctly balanced turntable. 5, speaker setup. 6, the position of your seat, listening seat, in relation to your stereo. Number 7, just be aware that you are playing the room. Everything reacts. Just like everything you set your hi-fi on will interact with the sound to make it sound differently. If you set a turntable on a big sponge, chances are it's going to erase the leading edges of the images and soften the sound. If you put it on a piece of granite, it'll make the sound really fast, but it might make it a little too hard and forward sounding. Wood is good. My friend Jonathan Halpern of Shindo and Tone Imports always tells me wood is good. You can't go wrong putting your gear on wood. That gets up to point number 8, an isolation platform. People put different platforms under their gear to drain energy, couple it to the floor, decouple it to the floor. That's kind of crazy. I just think about the sound. Really, the cheapest way to go and get uniform platforms for your turntable, your CD player, your integrated amplifier, or your separate pre and power amplifiers are the IKEA at Titlig bamboo butcher blocks platforms. They're about 18 bucks. And they work great. My friend Mike Trey, who is perhaps the best turntable setter-upper in the East Coast, told me about those, and they work great. They're thin, and butcher block is good because it cancels standing waves, all the butcher block. You can buy a maple shade platform, which, they're maple, they're big, but they can tend to warp. But the idea is to put something under your turntable, most under your system, because most hi-fi racks, the shelving is MDF. It's just kind of junk, really. You want to put something under the turntable or the rest of the hi-fi that will just make it sound better, and wood is good. And then you can fine-tune if you want to use little still points under the gear. I have little maple squares that I stack up sometimes. You can go down that rabbit hole a lot, but I think basic isolation platform is not rabbit hole. Number 9, cables. Cables do make a difference. Don't let anyone lie to you and think that cables mean nothing, that they all sound the same. That is just ridiculous. Some people use cables for tone controls. You know, my CD player is too bright. I put like Cardis cables will soften it. Those are softer sounding cables. The idea is to get a good sounding rig to start with, and then a cable that is transparent to that rig. Triode Wire Labs makes good cables that aren't too expensive. I use Auditorium 23 speaker cables. I stay away, to be honest, from AudioQuest. I find all of their cables to be very bright, even though they make a million different models. It's something to experiment with, cabling. And finally, number 10, at the end of all this stuff, just enjoy your records. Because each one of these, 1 through 10, is a rabbit hole you can descend. But I would say the most important things are to make sure for the life term of your records, clean stylus, clean vinyl, balanced turntable, correctly aligned tone arm, and then just enjoy the music. You know, because there's a thing called audiophile nervosa where people are constantly upgrading, constantly. I have to get this, I have to get that, spending more and more money. Now, you can enjoy your vinyl on a relatively inexpensive system, now more so than ever. There are more turntables being made now, more tube amplifiers than ever in recorded history. I'm not kidding you. Because with the vinyl resurgence, everybody's making turntables, everybody's releasing vinyl. So, you know, you can spend, this is a whole nother subject, you can put together a really great system for $1,500. You really can, that you can just sit back and enjoy. So at the end of the day, enjoy your music. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Dan.